Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamualaikum. Ji ayanu pakhair agale ni hao chunashumme washmale. Ohaya gonzaimas. Guten Morgen. Hola. Bonjour. Privyet. Kaifa hal? Hale shuma chatore. Ahlan wa sahlan. Marhaba. Buna mucho gracias. Swabi balli kare aaya. Hoş geldin anayo sayo. Khuya mora chi bato chi hal jod kali mera khairuttan. And a very warm welcome to everybody who's tuned into PTV World and watching World this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really lucky that I've been joined by my very well-learned colleague who happens to be Ms. Haja Satti. I happen to be Shahzad Hasan Khan, and we hope and pray that everybody out there is doing wonderfully well and that you're ready to kickstart your day with us. But first things first, hello Haja, Assalamu alaikum. How are you feeling today?
Walaikum assalam. Thank you so much for introducing me. Jazakallah khair. It's a fine morning in Islamabad, and as you commute from your house to your office place, so you would find that the streetscape of Islamabad has definitely changed. It has become more beautiful. There are lots of floras and faunas that you will find, and especially in the red zone as you enter near our office, it's really beautifully decorated because of the SCO Summit. And I hope and I wish and I pray that this beautiful landscaping, streetscaping continue to happen. Especially there is one particular suggestion that I would want to give to CDS.
Sure, go ahead.
Please don't plant these artificial flowers inside that, very pretty natural flowers, because there's something very attractive about the flowers, especially if they are natural, and it has its own ambience and aura. And I think artificial flowers do not do justice to the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. But apart from that, it was a lovely drive. And it has successfully completed the SCO Summit, and Pakistan has hosted this event very successfully.
And in addition to this, Haja, I would love to mention, how CDA actually worked tirelessly as well to make Islamabad look this beautiful, because while I was out driving, during midnight, I could see people still working, making sure that everything needs to be perfect, and it is perfect. And shukr alhamdulillah, finally, that we have concluded the SCO as well. Yes.
Right. So, 23rd Shanghai Cooperation Organization's Summit's Council of the Head of the Government agreed on deciding the concept of developing a new economic dialogue between the member states. The Council Head of the Government signed 8 documents in the summit held in Islamabad. The proposed documents agreed on deciding the concept of developing a new economic dialogue between the member states. It also decided the staffing of the Executive Committee of the Regional Anti-Terrorist Structures and on the budget of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization for 2025. Further, it also agreed on the staffing of the Secretariat of the SCO along with the financial report on the implementation of the organization's 2023 budget. The 8 decisions of the Council of the Head of the Government included the report of Secretariat of the SCO on the events and the meeting held within the framework of the implementation of the program of multilateral trade and economic cooperation on this member states. And to further expand on this conversation, what was the outcome of this very successful conclusion of the summit which Islamabad has hosted, and it talked a lot about Eurasian connectivity and what does Eurasian connectivity entails when we talk about economic integration. We are very glad that we have been joined by Dr. Hassan Daud, but he happens to be former project director of the CPEC. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Hassan, and thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you. It's my pleasure.
It's wonderful to have you, sir. Thank you so much for taking out time. First of all, obviously, I would like you to comment about the successful completion of the SCO Summit over here in Islamabad. It was the 23rd SCO Summit which took place. I believe that every Pakistani, alhamdulillah, takes pride in it. Please, your take on that first.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me and for everyone living in Islamabad, it was not just a matter of pride, but also a matter of joy to see. And I think Hajra just mentioned how the city transformed overnight and the hard work being done by each and everyone who was actually involved with this. So I would like to, first of all, congratulate the management of the entire SCO conference, everyone who was involved, even people from PTV, they worked tirelessly. I think this cannot be, there cannot be a better 2 days for Pakistan. And I think for me, over the past 1 decade since we started CPEC, those were good days when we were talking about development. The last couple of days, I think Pakistan showcased and highlighted the fact that we are very hospitable. We are a country which can work tirelessly for achieving its targets. And I think the communique that we've heard, and I think Hajra highlighted some of the salience of those, I think some of the important aspect around economy and regional integration are very important for Pakistan to take forward, because Pakistan has a beautiful geography. Allah has blessed us with that geography, great human resource, and I think this regional integration aspect, if it's coupled with these two natural endowment, I think Pakistan can uh, move forward in its economical and transformational transition that we want to take. So I think for me, brilliantly conducted, great 2 days for Pakistan.
Right. Dr. Hassan, so now because you mentioned about the communique, and now let's expand a conversation on that, since you're an expert on the CPEC. And the Prime Minister very categorically mentioned that there is a growing consensus on mutual currencies from the promising future. And in the past, I think a decade or so, we have seen this development where China and Russia has decided to do the trade in their own local currencies, right? So there's a lot of conversation about the de-dollarization going on. And how do you see this situation unfolding, especially in the SCO platform? Because there was a very interesting, I would say, conflation that was mentioned in the Ankara Institute of Policy and Crisis, in which they said that the SCO is sort of the Monroe Doctrine of the Asia.
Yeah.
So how do you see this development in economics?
I think more than I think more than the discussion around de-dollarization, I think we should focus on how we can complement each other. And one of the major aspect, and we can learn from European Union and some of the other regional blocs that we've seen, that by having common currencies, we can actually, people can move more freely. They can be better people-to-people interaction, and the tourism sector actually flourishes if we have common currencies. And also, like we have free trade zone and special economic zone under CPEC, those areas can actually utilize this currency swap agreements and using common currencies. I think that these are some of the important aspects. Sometimes we ignore these subtle discussions that are being done towards economic integration of our region. And this is perhaps, I would say, under the leadership of China, because SCO primarily emanates from there. I think and also BRICS is another platform where when in future Pakistan can leverage. What we are doing is perhaps not like what the Western a narrative is being built around nationalism and protectionism. Asia is rather getting closer. We are connecting with each other through BRI, through SEO, and perhaps if we can enhance our trade integration, Pakistan can actually benefit. Please remember that we are living in a time and age when we are not just interconnected but interdependent also. A lot of natural endowment exists here and some of it in our neighboring countries. And by regional integration, by understanding mutual and building mutual trust. And one of the very good slogan that I heard during this was fair trade. So if we can have fair trade, mutual trust, and build regional integration, I think
Yes,
all regional countries,
absolutely, absolutely.
especially developing countries
So
like Pakistan, can
there
benefit
are calls for
immensely
more of
from.
fair trade development, and especially for a more fairer order, an economic order too. But Dr. Hassan, there was a very interesting article that appeared in Dawn, in which talked about that how there is a shift in the global economic thinking from the free trade towards a more strategic trade. And the author mentions that Pakistan should enhance its export competitiveness and through the innovation policies, right? So if you see this entire conversation in the background or the concept or the context of the BRI development, the CPEC development, how do you see this unfolding within the state of Pakistan? Because you see, when we talk about the connectivity, Pakistan is a vital economic corridor and the platform which provides connectivity to the Central Asia, to the South Asia, to the Middle East. It's very strategically located. How do you see this development as a state if we are utilizing this potential?
As I said, our natural endowment in terms of our geography is very important, and I think we can leverage from there. What we need to also see, and what is very refreshing to highlight here also, is that our trade and export, especially with China, with Central Asian countries, have grown. I think in the past 3 years, our export to China has grown by about more than 30% actually, and same numbers are from Central Asian countries. And we are also diversifying our exports, our products. We're trying to leverage from FTA, which we were not able to do as much as we wanted to. So I think with this regional integration, with this better narrative that Pakistan is projecting about being a safer and responsible country and open for trade and business. What this can bring in, and I was highlighting earlier in a discussion that now that Russia would have the lead of SCO, there will be more interaction with Russian investors and leadership. So I think we can also invite them for investment in Pakistan. You know, we must remember that there is no boundary for knowledge now. There is no boundary for investment, and there is no boundary for people to people interaction. And this technology is helping, and the speed of communication is actually helping this trade. So now, wherever you go and wherever discussion that you see on, not just on the political front, but overall on the economic front, it's
Exactly.
about
And sir,
integration.
in addition to this, while we're talking about it, and what actually Hajra pointed out over here, there's one simple question which I would love to ask at this moment, and that is that our Premier actually spoke about how CPEC is actually in its second year of development, and the Road and Belt Initiative is the initiative which is going to help us in near future. So while you have served for CPEC yourself, when we talk about the second year development, what are we looking at and what sort of initiatives will be taking alongside all of our neighboring countries, which is actually going to help us with the Road and Belt Initiative as well?
Yeah, I think for one thing that had happened in the past 1 decade is that Pakistan stood out amongst all the corridors. CPEC was the best performing corridor. We were able to generate about 8,000 megawatt of energy, build road infrastructure around 580 kilometers. The Gwadar was being developed, and yesterday, day before yesterday, airport of Gwadar was handed over to Pakistan. So these were more tangible work and very conventional projects. Those were done. I think in the next way, there will be some new unconventional areas in which we will actually venture. I think some of those will be around agriculture, science and technology, human development, capacity building, and perhaps special economic zone and industrial cooperation where more business to business interaction will take place. So this will be very interesting. And I think for Pakistan, we will have to create that enabling environment, that pull factor, so that more Chinese businesses can come towards Pakistan. And I think one of the best things that CPEC has done has actually highlighted that when we have the whole of government approach, we can attract investment worth around 22 billion in less than 4 to 5 years. And I think now that we have SIFC, we are creating that pull factor. We are creating that synergy amongst the government bodies and entities. And perhaps Pakistan is much better placed now. We will also see, and I am quite hopeful for that, that the way that Saudis are visiting Pakistan and more Middle Eastern investors are visiting Pakistan, we'll see third-party participation in CPEC. And I think
Exactly.
Right.
those lines.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Dr. Hassan Daud Bhatt Sahab. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Very kind of you, and thank you so much for elaborating on it, and that too so nicely and wisely. And and honestly, Aja, I think when we speak of it, what really needs to kind of come out from here is that we speak about all of those initiatives which have been undertaken by the SCO, all the member countries, because there was a dialogue which I actually came through, and it was probably, I think, amongst having that peace within the region, which is actually going to
Yes.
play a very positive
Yes.
prospect for all of us,
Yes.
member countries as well. And not just that, I think when we spoke about Eurasia, when we talk about the Asia as a larger continent as well.
Yes, thank you so much. And yesterday, Prime Minister very categorically also shed lights on some of the very important talking points, and in which he talked about how the climate change is an existential crisis that needs a global cooperation. And this shows that SCO is not just the grouping of the countries which are specifically talking about the Eurasian region or the Asian region in the first place, but rather it's a grouping of the countries that are talking in the global language about the global terms. And he also talked about that how eradicating poverty is an also more immoral imperative, and we need to do that, and we will obviously develop the conversation on that. But I think climate change, when we talk about it, it requires an immense global cooperation, and how SCO member states can develop that parameters or a platform where we can have a joint sort of a collaboration, because we see in Lahore the smog season is just here. It's called the 5th season, especially in the Lahore, and those dark polluted airs requires a global cooperation, right? Because those airs, they're not bounded by the national geographies or national boundaries, rather they can traverse the boundaries. So that means that we need to talk more about it, not just talk the walk, and we have to walk the talk on that, because there are the farming practices which are practiced across the border, which contribute to this very phenomenon. We have seen that how Beijing has very successfully curbed those darker skies, those grey weather patterns that we are witnessing, and Beijing is a very successful model that how we can combat the air pollution, and Pakistan can have that same sort of case study here and have those practical modalities here which we can develop with the help of the China.
Exactly. And Haja, in addition to this, I think what we really need to kind of speak about over here or bring about the conversation is that imagine that, for all of the member countries to come over here, visit and know that, how peaceful and hospitable Pakistan is. But what impacts do you think that it will have on our economy? Because from 2023 till 2024, I was going through, how Pakistan now, alhamdulillah, is moving towards the right direction, where how we are actually making sure that now that the economy is going to be more stable, how we have seen our stock exchange, probably broke all records. So how do you think that this summit in particular will have its impact and, for the member countries to kind of come and have those collaborations with us?
Right. Thank you so much for asking me this question. And I think the world is moving towards the unipolar world, towards a more multipolar world. So you see that there are lots of different poles that are propping up. China is one center of power, Russia is another center of power, obviously West is another center of powers. And in this multipolarity, in the era of multipolarity, it is essential for Pakistan to have its representation in different poles, right? And SCO holding the meeting of the Council of the Head of the Government in Islamabad is the manifestation of that we want to have our representation in the different poles in the globe. And when we talk about our representation in the different globes, so obviously it is manifested in different fields, and economy is one of the fields that you mentioned. So you see, according to Tufts University report, the Caspian Sea is very oil-rich region. So for example, the Central Asian region, the Russia, it has 32.8 billion barrels of the oil reserve, and South Asia is an energy-starved region. So we can have that sort of exchanges where we can import the energy from Central Asia to South Asia, and we can also export it to other countries, right? So we need to develop that sort of a model and to further elaborate this conversation.
We're very lucky that we've actually been joined by the former ambassador himself as well, Mr. Shahid Kiani Saab. Assalamu alaikum, Shahid Saab. Thank you so much for taking out time.
And how's your motorbike going on?
Alhamdulillah, so far so good. Thank you so much for still remembering my motorbike. But right now, I think what we really are talking about over here is the motor of economy, for the country and how SCO will serve the purpose. So please, sir, your take.
The thing is, you see, if you have been for the last few days, I've been on the television, and I've been hearing other colleagues and other people who've been talking. The fact that the SCO Summit of governments took place is itself a big, for example, for us, a big boost to our image. Because people have been talking for the last many weeks prior to this, that this is not going to happen. Security, national security is our serious challenges for our country. It will continue to remain so. But people look at our security challenges in isolation. They don't understand that there are other external factors also. But nevertheless, this was, in my opinion, an extremely important event, landmark in foreign policy terms for Pakistan. And for those who came, all the member countries of SCO were represented by the heads of government, barring aside India. But in the representation of India in this SCO was also extremely important. For the Central Asian Republic, please try to understand, there are kind of natural resources, there are abundant natural resources in those countries, but they have a problem of connectivity. And this is where we come in, and to provide them the connectivity. But the biggest obstacle which I have seen, and the discussion was taken place, the Prime Minister also stated, was the issue of Afghanistan. The instability in Afghanistan, the fact that the Taliban-led government does not understand, doesn't want to understand, that, bringing other factions inside Afghanistan on as part of their government, and also not allowing their territory to be used, to be allowed by other extremist elements. That is one thing. They're in a denial mode. This is a very big problem, and our Prime Minister pointed out this obstacle in the connectivity. So overall, it went extremely well, and the if you look at Central Asian Republic countries, the fact that, look at the number of countries which were here, You have Russia, you have China, you have India, you have Iran. They are in their own manner very, important and significant economic powers. Then as Central Asian republics, for Pakistan has come on the map as a place where you can hold meetings and on the sidelines also, which I have heard, there very important meetings took place. And let's hope this would be, in my opinion, a quantum jump for Pakistan's image.
Right, Shahid Saab, we did heard that there were countries requested the unilateral meeting, bilateral meeting as well. But Shahid Saab, we also need to shed light, because there was a very interesting aspect that was mentioned in the highlighted the SCO Summit, in which the SCO Forum collectively talk about how the unilateral use of these sanctions is contrary to the spirit of international law, right? So a lot of commentators and analysts are interpreting it's a jibe at the dominant order, right? So we've seen that there's a multipolar world which is emerging. How do you see the role of Pakistan in this emergence of the multipolar world? And we are seeing and witnessing that the global dominant order that was in place, people are critiquing it, and there are very strong voices that are coming in. How do you see it, especially in the Shanghai spirit of non-interference and respecting the territorial integrity of the countries?
Since the end of the Cold War, multipolarity is there. You could see the rise of China. You have seen, I am being very honest with you, even though India's economic power is being used, I'm just saying, for China, it's a friendly rise. In its own history since 1949 till today, China has never been an aggressor, and most of its neighbors are comfortable with China. With India, economic rise. But if you look at its smaller neighbors, from Bhutan to Nepal to Sri Lanka, and in Pakistan, the comfort, and Maldives also, the comfort zone is not there. There is a problem that India wants to, muscle in its relationship with these countries. So this is a problem, which the SCO, maybe the next summit, when the next summit takes place, which may possibly be maybe in St. Petersburg or in Moscow, Russia. I think this issue needs to be discussed. That connectivity, yes, but not at the terms of big powers. This is something which we need to look into it. One thing which you have just talked about sanctions, you talked about sanctions. The problem is, if you look at the UN Charter, sanctions are imposed, but in a unilateral manner, they're being imposed. UN, it is unfortunate, but the fact is that the sanctions have been imposed on the will of the big powers, not in a consensus never been reached to impose sanctions, and sanctions have been imposed without listening to the country which is at the receiving end. That is a problem. We need to look into it. That this is not all, because what happens is when sanctions are imposed. Look at Iran. For the last 4 decades, sanctions have been imposed on that country. We had suffered on sanctions when Pakistan's nuclear weapon, when we exported nuclear weapon in 1998, without listening to the country as to why you're doing it. That is a problem, with that without listening, the punishment is meted out.
Shahid Saab, I would like to further expand our conversation, because you raised a very important point, and that is that how, and Prime Minister also raised this point at the SCO Summit, in which he talked about that how the unilateral coercive measures is contrary to the, is not in the spirit with the international law. So, and he also talked about how there is a need for reforming the financial architecture or the institutions, right? So, like you mentioned that how there are elements within the IMF, how they weaponize the politics in order to make sure that that is a tool that you use for the third world countries, for the global south, for a very coercive sort of the agenda, right? So when we talk about reforming the financial architectures, how do you think that will be possible? And especially that does not reflect the reality of post-World War II, because that was the last century, right? Now we are living in the 21st century. How do you think we need more structures that are more responsive, for example, to the climatic conditions, right? In Pakistan in 2022, we witnessed massive floodings. We had $30 billion of the climate losses, right? And obviously, to compensate for that, we need money because we are a poor country. How do you think we need more fairer economic system that calls for a more equitable growth and the distribution
Where
of
we are
these?
not at halt with the prosperity drives that we have within the country as well, or for the developing countries.
Please go ahead.
Listen, we have to be fair. I'm a diplomacy practitioner, and diplomacy practitioners are realist. I live in a realism. You see, when the people talk about brotherly relations, that doesn't exist. These words, I don't know who coined it. People formulate their foreign policy in their national interest. You see, and all countries interact with you in a national interest. Now, one by one, let me state to you. First of all, we have been, the IMF have been at our throat for the last now many decades. Who's to be blamed? Ourselves also. We should need to look into ourselves as to why we are at the mercy of IMF. And I tell you, at the back of the IMF, in these all international financial institutions, there are bigger powers. You're using it, use this thing, because that if you look at it, you start having a discussion and conversation with the IMF, you start off, it takes months and there is a total silence. And then you start looking into the media and they say, okay, we have done our, this part and this part and this part. Most important thing, sir, is put your own house in order. There are certain reforms you need to bring, painful reforms you need to bring within your own country so that you can get rid of this thing.
Thank you so much, Gyani Sahab. Thank you so much,
Thank
Gyani
you so
Sahab,
much.
for sharing, your insight on the SCO as well, and what we need to do and how we need to, or probably the other countries need to kind of make sure that they work in the national interest and how their foreign policy works as well. But with that, I think we would love to take a short break over here at this point of time, while we are actually, kind of reminiscing on the successful summit of the SCO. After the short break, ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, we have a champion of Scrabble waiting for us as well. Or rather, we are waiting for him. Ladies and gentlemen, after a short break, good morning.
Welcome back, and before going on to the break, we were having a very fruitful discussion on the SCO Summit, which completed 3-day discussion over the Council of the Head of the Governments, and where Prime Minister very categorically spoke about how there is a dire need to combat the poverty. And joining this conversation to 17th of October, today happens to be the International Day for the Eradication of the Poverty, and we observe this day every year since 1987 on the 17th of October, and over 100,000 people gathered at Paris, where the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was signed in 1948 to honor the victims of extreme poverty, violence and hunger. They proclaimed that poverty is a violation of human rights and affirmed the need to come together to ensure that these rights are respected. Since then, people of all background, beliefs and social origins have gathered every year on October 17 to renew their commitment and show their solidarity with the poor people. And obviously, having this conversation around the destitute people is very much important, is very much necessary. We will have this conversation, and we continue to have this conversation. But there's also a very interesting, or rather I would say a death anniversary that we would also like to commemorate
Exactly.
today.
So we would certainly like to pay our rich tribute to Hakeem Mohammed Saeed Sahab as well, because it happens to be his death anniversary today. He was a scholar, philanthropist and former governor of Sindh, Hakeem Mohammed Saeed. And Hakeem Mohammed Saeed was actually born in January 9th, 1920 in Delhi, and migrated to Pakistan with his family after independence in 1947. He established Hamdard Dawakhana and later spread its branches all over Pakistan, which is very popular and familiar to all of us while growing up as well.
True.
He authored several books on religion, health, sciences, literature, social and scientific topics and travelogues. Hakeem Muhammad Saeed was assassinated on this date in 1998. May your soul rest in peace, sir. Thank you so much
Ameen.
for your contribution. While we are at it, I do know for a fact that, so I think this is something which our producer Sana will actually get as a surprise. Today happens to be the third day of the second test in between Pakistan versus
yes.
England.
Yes.
And Pakistan was doing wonderfully well. They took actually 6 wickets just yesterday. They're still at it. I think it was Jamie Smith. Oh yeah, we have live visuals. I like cricket.
Wonderful.
I like cricket too much, so it's Noman Ali for now, bowling and making sure that we could get those early wickets. We had a trail of 127, till yesterday. I don't know because the TV is a little far away from me, so I still cannot see
Right.
whether how much England
Right.
has scored. If somebody can tell me from the MCR, I think I'll be lucky enough to figure out whether what score England is at and whether what Pakistan needs to do from here onwards. So I'm going to ask Sana, please, can you share the score with us? How much England has scored so far? Can anybody tell me, please?
But Shahzad, we will have this conversation, obviously, and since you're the expert in the cricket and you are constantly engaged in the cricket commentary, so you have acquired a lot of experience, not just by watching the cricket, but by also playing it, right?
Yep.
You're a fan of that. But what are the implications of this test match if Pakistan wins? How would it reflect broadly at Pakistan's performance and especially in the World Cup?
Yeah, so Haja, it's going to get better. So now imagine that, that we obviously play test championships now as well now, but what has happened is that since 1965 our performance has stooped so down that or so low that now we are actually at the bottom of the list of the teams amongst the top 10. So since 1965 we haven't been ranked this low, number one. So imagine that Bangladesh came to Pakistan, they whitewashed us. England first test match, they won by innings and some score. So, our performances weren't that great. But, there's a new selection committee which has come in. They made Babar Azam, Shaheen Shah Afridi and Naseem Shah sit down. And they have brought in Sajid and, so for the very first time, I think we have gone with 4 spinners. We're doing a fantastic job. From here onwards, it looks like as if Pakistan can win this series only if given that we make the same wicket over here in Rawalpindi. And certainly, we're going to get better in the test rankings, and that's exactly what we're eyeing for.
And Shahzad, thank you so much for increasing my knowledge because you're the expert person here. But Shahzad, there has been a constant criticism because I'm a lay person. I don't know much about the cricket, but I would like to hear your analysis on that, and in which especially my father and my brother are super into the sports, into the cricket, and they often talk about how the T20 format has actually eroded the strength of the cricket, and especially when we talk about I think the 50-over match or I mean these test crickets, right? So what is your analysis? Is this a right assessment or is it a more something more deeper or complex meanings at the interplay which I don't understand?
Exactly. I think that just to give out this notion I believe is not correct, and it's because of the fact that so in test cricket you have to bowl 30 overs in a day, right? In 50-over game you have to bowl at least 10 overs a day, now, and in T20 you only have to bowl 4 overs a day. Now imagine which one's easier, So that one format which is easier and gets you more money, obviously everybody's focused on to that. But we have a domestic circuit over here. The President One Day Cup is on. Not just that, we have a 4-day cricket set up with the name of Quaid-e-Azam Trophy, so it's more of test as well. So a gentleman, who's actually going to perform in Quaid-e-Azam Trophy will or should be selected for any other format. That's not going to create a problem. But yes, obviously because it's more commercial, there are leagues all over the world and the players are interested to do that. So what they do is that they skip the domestic circuit. So it's more like that you're not going to the gym because of the fact that that you do not need a lot of strength for what you actually do. But not just that, I think, for now, Pakistan is doing wonderfully well under the captaincy of Shan Masood. But what is more surprising and shocking is that from 2021, imagine that, 26 or 27 selectors have been changed. And now finally it looks like as if Aqib Jabed, Aleem Dar, Azhar Ali, all of these people, and Asad Shafiq will make a great impact. While we're at it, I think because Pakistan is playing away in Pakistan, Asad Shafiq, who happens to be a selector, is playing somewhere in US. So I think what we need to do is that we need to put national interest or prioritize national interest more than what we want to do for ourselves. I think because you have a job already, you are a selector, why should you be in US? You should be in Pakistan with your team.
Right, and thank you so much for pointing this entire nuisance of the cricket commentaries into it. But while we are at it, we've seen that when you talk about how we need to put the national interest above our personal interest, and I think Prime Minister was very categorical when he spoke about how in the SCO Summit that poverty is a common point where it could bring together a lot of people, and we need to combat this menace that is stalking especially the third world countries like Pakistan. And I'm really proud as a Pakistani citizen that how our state is combating this menace of poverty. And I think one of the amazing initiatives that stands out is the Benazir Income Support Program, BIS program. And we've seen that it's a very complex, very multi-layered program which is out there helping people out there, not in terms of the cash transfers, but also transferring the skills to the people out there, and especially to the women out there. And because of the complexity of that, because of the very well thought out process of the Benazir Income Support Program, we have seen that how the enrollments of the national ID cards, CNICs, has increased. Women who were reluctant to get their ID cards out there, and because when you have the ID card, you are applicable, or you have a lot of other benefits. For example, you have the right to vote, you have the right of the BISP. So it's a wonderful sort of an initiative, and we've seen that women are acquiring their ID card, their CNICs, and that is increasing their also political participation.
But
right?
Haja, I have a question for you at this point of time. Obviously, you've always been very inclusive about, all tiers of our community, and this is a fact that I love about you as a human. But what I'm going to ask you is, do you remember that, how in the times of Hazrat Umar Razi Allah Ta'ala, there was hardly anybody that you could find to give zakat or charity to. Now imagine that there was this one concept back then that everybody used to do charity, everybody used to give out zakat, and so certainly, it's a system which our religion provides us to eradicate poverty. Don't you think that, probably for all of us, it's not something that the government needs to do. All of us needs to pay our zakat. All of us needs to give out our sadaqat and make sure that, that it goes to the deserving. It will solve the problem on a very larger scale, because we happen to be as Pakistanis the most philanthropic nation.
That's true. That's very true. But I think there are a lot of complexities that have now occurred in 21st century. And if you are comparing it to the 7th century Arabia, I think the population was not that much. I would say there was not mushrooming growth as it is as of now. And I think because of our own human complexities that we added to our lifestyle, especially the fact that we have made our lifestyles more complex, more complicated, because we are vying for the brands and all of this stuff, which was not a very prominent feature of the urban or the rural life back in 7th century Arabia. And we will obviously, we are going to talk about it, and we will continuously talk about it. But I think let's move on, hinge a conversation again to the
I want to bring it back to Scrabble though, by the way, because I want to share it with all our audiences. So, I just want to congratulate Mr. Wasim Khatri, because he made Pakistan proud at Scrabble World Cup in USA. With exceptional strategy and skills, Wasim clinched 3rd place, demonstrating his expertise at championship, which actually is going to bring me back to, this is something which is actually going to bring me back to where how we as kids, used to play Scrabble. I think that's one thing that I certainly want to reminisce about, and how, your vocabulary would kind of contribute towards you becoming, a champion amongst your siblings. Did you play Scrabble?
Of course I did. And we used to have those board games. We used to have Ludo, we used to have Monopoly, Scrabble, and all of these things. And I remember that there was one portion in my cupboard that was full because of these board games.
My God.
But I do feel that nowadays kids, they have the lots of modern toys, and there are a lot of conversation. Those toys might not be inculcating or polishing their creative skills or imaginative skills. And we used to have a lot of outdoor games, right? For example, King Stop, London Stop, Pakdan Paklai, and all of this. Kish, exactly.
Maran Pittu, something.
Yes.
Coco.
Yes. Pittu Garam, not Maran Pittu, right?
Yeah.
Where there were
Kalachi Pati Jumerat aayi hai.
Yes. All of these wonderful games. And I think when we talk about Scrabble, so our parents would naturally gravitate towards the Scrabble because the Scrabble was one game that used to give you more, sensory touch, and apart from that, it used to increase your imagination and, like Shahzad mentioned, vocabulary too, because you need to have a good vocabulary in order to have a good Scrabble, right?
And in addition to this, I think what are those other games that you can actually recall now. So imagine, because I grew up with my sisters, alhamdulillah, I had 5 elder sisters and had 5 of my sisters from my popo. So imagine that, I was one of those brothers who was always playing these girly games, Kish. So I don't know how
Kish was not a girly game.
I mean, it was.
No,
I mean,
it has nothing to do with the gender.
Yeah,
like,
no, but
we
it was girly for me because it was all my sisters playing those games. Now, so I was like, okay,
That
nobody's
is
playing
the
cricket,
reason.
nobody's playing football,
Right.
nobody's playing any other sport or contact sport or whatnot.
We had, I mean, I was never into like cricket because I could never catch and that I had to run a lot and I hated that thing. But I was good at like the dodge the ball.
Yeah. Dodge the ball, yes.
It was a wonderful game, and then it was I think King Stops or something like that. London Stop, I do remember.
I mean, I
London
don't know.
Stop, yeah.
Which one was, where you had to actually throw a pebble and then you have to do 1, 2.
Stepu, that you call, in Urdu it was called Stapu, but in English it was called Stepu, yes.
And in addition to this, I think that one last thing, before we wrap it up, and that is that the only thing that I used to hate when I was a kid and was like, because imagine that we were the kids who actually would always want to go out, play in the park and do your thing and whatnot, or play in the street and cricket.
True.
So I would always be like, it would be 3 p.m. during the day, and I'll go to my mom. I'd be like, Maji, can I go outside? She was like, no. And I was like, why? Bas main kehta. So that's one thing which I actually used to hate the most. That why can't you give me a logic or reason of why you're not allowing me to go outside? So I think,
if you ask the reason, then you are dead. So that was the deadliest mistake that you can ever make if you refuse the khana, right? The lunch, dinner, or breakfast, or even for that matter, the lunch box, right?
And very quickly, one more thing which I would love to add over here. So how as kids we never knew how much of appetite we have. So imagine we were always interested in putting the curry ourselves into the plate or the rice, because mothers would always say, let me do it. I'll be like, no, we'll do it ourselves, and we'll end up kind of putting a lot of in the plate. So imagine towards the end we would make a cake out of it just because we can't finish it, and mom's really on the head, so we'll make a cake out of it. We'll say, okay, it's Hajra's birthday today, and then feed it to everybody else. I think it was a technique, but yes, ladies and gentlemen, with that we'll actually bid farewell on this occasion. But congratulations to all of those people who contributed towards the SCO Summit, made it possible, the administration, the government, the Rangers, the Pakistan Army, Pakistan Police, each and every Pakistani. So I think it's a great day for all of us to kind of reminisce on that. Until next time, look after yourselves. 1, 2, 3.
Good morning. Allah Hafiz.